next thing that we want to talk about in this section is to look at different types of systems of measurement. So there are two systems of measurement that we're going to talk about. There is the standard imperial system, which is the system that we commonly use in the United States, and also it's used in the United Kingdom. And then we also have the metric system, which is used in almost every other country. So we're going to talk about these two systems of measurement. So let's start with looking at length. So what do we use here in the United States to measure length? So you want to think about that. What kind of measurements do you use for length? If I am measuring something, for example, if I'm measuring my height, I'm going to measure that in feet. Okay, and so that is one measurement that we would have here in the United States. We measure length in terms of a foot, and that is typically abbreviated FT. All right, if we're measuring length, we might talk about something being a distance of however many miles. Like if we were driving and we wanted to look at how far is it from my house to school, I would measure that in miles. We typically abbreviate that MI for miles. Other common measurements for length would include inches, which we abbreviate IN, or maybe yards, which we abbreviate YD. And there are others, but these are some of the more common ones that we use here in the United States to measure length. Okay, so what measurements do we use in the metric system for length? This is where we start talking about meters, and we abbreviate meters with just an M. All right, if you're talking about something smaller, you might look at a centimeter. Abbreviated CM, or even smaller would be a millimeter. Abbreviated MM. If you wanted something a little larger than a meter, we typically refer to that as a kilometer or a kilometer. And we abbreviate that KM. So those are all metric system measurements. And again, there are others, but those are probably the more common ones that we use. All right, let's think about weight. So what do we use here in the United States to measure weight? So these would be our standard imperial measurements for weight. We would use pounds. That's probably the most common one. And that's abbreviated LB. We might use ounces. That would be abbreviated OZ, or maybe tons. All right, and again, there are others. Just trying to give some examples. There aren't really any abbreviations that we use for tons. So again, these are the measurements that we would use here in the United States. So these are going to be our standard imperial measurements. These are going to be abbreviated. Standard imperial would be abbreviated SI. All right, and what about metric system? What do we do for weight for metric system? This is where we talk about grams, abbreviated with the G. Smaller would be milligrams. Which is going to be abbreviated MG. Bigger would be kilograms. Abbreviated kg. All right, and again, these are the metric system measurements. All right, and then what about volume? So volume is how much space something takes up. So what do we use in the United States for volume? This might be like a gallon of milk, okay? And so we would use gallon as a measurement of volume, and that would be abbreviated GAL. We also use, I'm just going to put some other ones up here, we use quart. That would be QT. Pint, cups, those type measurements. Pints would be PT. Cups, that one doesn't really have an abbreviation. Okay, and then we also use fluid ounces. So remember that on the weight we use ounces, but if we're talking about volume, we use fluid ounces as a measurement there. All right, so again, all of these are the standard imperial type measurements. So the SI measurements used in the United States and the United Kingdom. All right, so what measurements do we use for the metric system for volume? This is where we use liters. This would be abbreviated with an L, or possibly milliliters. And let me get that spelled right. Abbreviated ml. So these are our measurements for the metric system for volume. Okay, and then the other thing that we might look at would be time. Time is kind of interesting because it doesn't really matter what system of measurement we're in. Those are going to be the same in both cases. So time would be, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, those type things. And those are the same whether we are in the SI measurement system or the metric system. All right, so I'm just going to do kind of this and say this is both SI and metric. So we don't really make a distinction there between the two systems when we're talking about time. Okay, so the only thing that we need to be able to do here is we want to be able to talk about if they give you a measurement, we want to be able to say, is that measurement length, weight, volume, or time? All right, and then we want to be able to identify the system that's being used, whether it's the standard imperial, the SI, or the metric. All right, so let's go ahead and just kind of look at a few examples. The first one, and you have to know your abbreviations, the first one is 14 pounds. All right, so pounds, remember, is a measurement of weight. And pounds is used in the United States, so that is a SI measurement for weight. All right, 3.14 fluid ounces. So again, that is a measurement that we might use here in the United States for volume, for fluid volume. So that is also the SI system of measurement. 589.332 milligrams. So milligrams is a measurement of weight, but it is not a typical United States measurement. So this is the metric system. Okay, we don't normally, when someone says how much does something weigh, we don't normally give our answer in milligrams. All right, so that is a metric system measurement. All right, 35 years, that's going to be a measure of time. Okay, and remember that time does not distinguish between the SI measurement system and the metric, so it is both. "68 yards. Yards is a measure of length, and it is a measurement that is used here in the United States. So this would be the SI measurement system. And then the last one, 125 S. S stands for seconds. So that is a measurement of time. And again, it is a measurement that is used in both the SI system of measurement and also the metric system of measurement. So you just want to be sure here that you can identify the type of measurement that's being made. Okay, so whether it's length, weight, fluid volume, or time, and then what system of measurement, the standard imperial or the metric system, that is being used.